Thank you, Chair, and thank you all for being here today to take our questions on this important topic. I guess I'll pick up on something that was mentioned a few different times, and that's about the priorities of the government. And as I understand, going into the CUSMA negotiations, the government set out 5 priorities, and as I recall correctly, softwood lumber was not a priority within that. Also, after the last election at the beginning of this parliament, and again, if I recall correctly, I believe the mandate letters of the Deputy Prime Minister, of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, of the Minister of Natural Resources, and the Minister of International Trade, none of them actually mentioned softwood lumber in this dispute in that. And I put that out there because there was sort of an indication and a feeling in 2017 that we were getting close towards a deal. I suppose the crux of the question is to know what happened and if you feel there has been a shift in priorities for this government away from softwood lumber.
Thank you for the question. It's a good question. Mr. Chair, I don't feel that there's been a shift from this government away from softwood lumber. It's been made very clear to me that softwood lumber is a very high priority for the government, that we should pursue these cases in both the WTO and before NAFTA panels vigorously to bring the United States back to the negotiating table. This was a strategy that's agreed to by provinces, territories, industry, and it's a strategy that worked during Lumber 4. It was after successive victories and remands under both the WTO and NAFTA panels that the United States agreed to the softwood lumber agreement in 2006. So it's an effective strategy. It's one that takes, unfortunately, some time, but I think it is the best path forward, and it is a very high priority for the government.
Okay, and I suppose just to help the committee better understand and help all members here understand in terms of, obviously, it's good to know it is a priority, but in terms of the impact it has, do you have any information you can provide us in terms of employment, in terms of GDP, onto how this dispute has impacted the sector?
Thank you for the question. So there have been, I believe on Monday when our colleagues from Natural Resources Canada were here, they outlined some of the impacts that they've been tracking very closely across the country. From what we're seeing, there's been no, it's very difficult to attribute any mill closures to this point directly to this dispute. I think what we're seeing out in British Columbia is obviously much more related to the fiber supply issues that are unfortunately that the industry is going through in British Columbia. There have been other curtailments and slowdowns across the country and in British Columbia, and some of that is certainly due to poor market conditions, and the duties are certainly a part of that. But it's not, as far as I understand, there's been no mill closure across the country that's directly attributable to the dispute at this point. We've fortunately had a prolonged period of quite high prices in last year, which helped the industry. Prices have come down to a more sort of normal level the last 6 months or so. But those prices and of course exchange rates and things have allowed the industry to for the most part to be able to keep operating. Again, sort of close to the line and difficult circumstances, we realize, but at least to keep operating.
Thank you. I may have to respectfully disagree with some aspects of that. Actually, Kenora Forest Products in my riding is a mill that has recently closed, and they had actually indicated that the softwood lumber dispute was the primary reason that dragged them down. So it definitely is having an effect for sure, I would say. I guess I'll change gears slightly towards CUSMA and how it's now going to be coming into force hopefully soon. What sort of impact does that have in terms of continuing the negotiations of this agreement, the softwood agreement?
I don't think the CUSMA and the softwood lumber agreement are directly related in that respect, but I think the goodwill that we've achieved with the United States, the cooperation and the relationships that the Deputy Prime Minister especially has developed with Secretary Ross and USTR Lighthizer can only be positive for moving forward in the softwood lumber discussions.
Okay, and obviously, this is something that impacts us here in Canada greatly, and to the States maybe not to as great of a degree. Has there, I suppose the direct question, has there been any interest from the States in settling this dispute?
So thank you for the question. So again, as we've noted, we continue to use every opportunity to explore with our counterparts and as do our ministers and the Deputy Prime Minister and Prime Minister to see if there's some positive momentum that can be gained from the conclusion of the CUSMA negotiations to try and deal with this remaining irritant in the trading relationship. And again, I think there is interest on the U.S. part to do that, but again, they need their industry to be on side. As my colleague pointed out, the industry has what is essentially a veto over the negotiations. They won't agree. We need them to agree to any final deal. So until their own industry is willing, the U.S. administration has been reluctant to engage.
Mm-hmm. And why do you feel that their industry maybe isn't willing? Is there not any incentive at this point in the industry, or what would be their incentive for coming on board?
Well, certainly I think they view the higher prices that the duties cause to be to their benefit. Higher prices in the States means they benefit as companies selling softwood lumber. As was mentioned in our opening statement, the loser in this in the U.S. in any event is the U.S. consumer who's trying to buy a house or build a house or do renovations. They are the ones who are going to indirectly pay this 20% premium being placed on these building products, and that's why the National Association of Home Builders in the U.S. has repeatedly made representations to the U.S. administration on this point, indicating that the tariffs are increasing the price of homes in the U.S., pricing hundreds of thousands of people out of the housing market. So that's the unfortunate side effect of this, but of course the lumber industry there is interested in having those higher prices, having that disruption. It's only, again, through the success of litigation where through the litigation we are able to curtail the ability of Commerce to impose those duties, that we eventually are able to convince the U.S. industry that it's in their interest to return to the table.
Thank you very much.